What if I told you that the oldest Bible on earth holds stories the modern world was never meant to read, that within its pages are the words of angels and the record of a man who walked with God until he was taken beyond death, that this Bible still rests in Ethiopia while the rest of the world was told to forget. The Ethiopian Bible, preserved through centuries of war and silence, carries books that were once part of the divine record, among them the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees and others, long erased from Western canon. But here is the question: why were they removed, and what did they reveal that frightened the councils of men for in those forbidden pages? Enoch writes not as a poet but as a witness, describing realms of light and beings who descended to teach humanity knowledge never meant for mortal hearts. It is a book that unveils how the heavens watched the corruption of the earth, how angels once walked among men, and how the flood was not only a punishment but a cleansing of forbidden wisdom. Yet for centuries this testimony was sealed, its words labelled heresy, its readers silenced. The Ethiopian Bible stands as a living remnant of that ancient world, its script written in G's, its rhythm echoing the prayers of priests who never bowed to Rome. While Europe debated doctrine and empire, Ethiopia guarded revelation, carrying the torch of text the councils rejected. The question is not only what was banned, but who decided what truth was allowed to survive. When the Book of Enoch spoke of watchers descending upon Mount Hermon, when it described the order of stars, the gates of winds, the judgment of souls before the throne of glory, perhaps it touched mysteries too vast for the structures of religion to contain. For knowledge is both light and fire, and men who hold it without reverence turn illumination into rebellion. Imagine for a moment that a fragment of heaven was hidden in a land of mountains and incense, kept by monks who copied each letter as prayer, not as scholarship. Imagine that the very scrolls which vanished from Western libraries remained open on their altars. The story of Enoch, the seventh from Adam, is not a myth but a mirror. It tells of what happens when heaven's wisdom meets human pride, when divine messengers cross the boundary set by God and teach forbidden arts, warfare, enchantments, the cutting of roots, the secrets of the stars. Humanity, intoxicated by light, fell deeper into darkness. And so God sent Enoch as a voice between two realms to remind creation that power without holiness becomes corruption. When the councils later gathered to decide the shape of Scripture, they faced a choice to preserve revelation that humbled kings or to preserve order that served them. The result was silence. And in that silence, the Ethiopian church kept what others cast away. To this day, their Bible holds 81 books, not 66. And in its breath, we hear an older pulse of faith, unbroken by empire. So tonight, as we open this story, we are not reading forbidden law. We are remembering a covenant that time tried to erase. The Book of Enoch was not lost. It was hidden, waiting for a generation hungry enough to ask again why light was banned. And if we dare to listen, perhaps we will hear what Enoch heard, the echo of divine order calling creation back to awe. The story of Enoch begins before the flood, before the towers of men reached for the sky, before the language of the earth was divided. It begins in a time when heaven still spoke with the earth and angels walked among the sons of Adam. They were called the Watchers, sent to guide humanity in wisdom and order. But as Enoch wrote in his vision, they saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took wives for themselves and taught them the secrets of heaven. They revealed to mankind the art of metal, the shaping of weapons, the knowledge of enchantments and signs. They taught the beauty of stones and the meaning of stars. And in doing so, they broke the boundary between what was holy and what was meant to remain hidden. The earth became filled with violence and corruption, and the cry of injustice reached the throne of God. And so judgment came not as rage, but as restoration. For the flood was not merely water, it was the cleansing of polluted wisdom. Enoch, the seventh, from Adam, was chosen to see these things before they happened. He was taken into the heavens, shown the places where angels stood, the paths of the sun and moon, the chambers of the winds and the throne that shone brighter than crystal. He wrote not for glory but for remembrance, that future generations might know what had been lost. He saw the watchers bound in darkness. He saw the souls of the righteous resting in light. He saw the river of fire that flows before the face of the Most High. And he heard the voice that said, "These are the secrets reserved for those who walk in purity." Enoch returned with knowledge too vast for his age, yet pure in heart. He warned the fallen and comforted the faithful, but men would not hear, for they loved the knowledge of angels more than the wisdom of obedience. Centuries later, his writings would be read by prophets and scholars, by the desert fathers of the East and the early churches of Africa. But when the councils of men gathered to decide which words were divine and which were dangerous, they could not bear the fire that Enoch carried. His book was declared unfit, too strange, too celestial, too honest. It spoke of a world in which heaven touched earth and angels sinned, and yet it pointed to a Messiah who would one day descend and restore all things. Perhaps that was the truth they feared for. It reminded the rulers of religion that salvation would not come through power, but through humility, through one who would conquer by light, not by the sword. And so the book was banned, whispered in monasteries guarded by Ethiopians who refused to let the memory die. The Ethiopian Bible preserved it, not out of rebellion, but out of reverence. They believed that if God once revealed himself through Enoch, then his words must not be buried in the dust. For they testify that judgment belongs to God alone, and that mercy is older than wrath. Even now scholars read the book with wonder, for it describes stars and cycles that modern science would only rediscover thousands of years later. It speaks of the measure of time, of the order of seasons, of the balance of creation. It reminds us that ancient man once knew the harmony of the cosmos, not through mathematics, but through worship. The book is a bridge between heaven and earth, between spirit and matter, between the seen and the unseen. And this is why it endures. It is not a threat to faith, it is a mirror to it, showing that divine truth cannot be confined to human authority. When the Ethiopian monks chant from these ancient scrolls, they are not reviving heresy. They are remembering the breath of God that spoke before empires rose. They read of Enoch walking with God, and they understand that the path of holiness is not a ladder to climb, but a light to follow their faith. Teaches that the forbidden is not evil if it leads the heart back to reverence, that knowledge is sacred only when it is surrendered to love, and that revelation is never lost, only hidden until hearts are ready to receive it. So when we open the Ethiopian Bible, we're not opening a secret. We are returning to an origin, a world where heaven still whispers to the earth, where every star has a voice and every man has a destiny written in light. The more one reads the words of Enoch, the more one senses that his vision was not only a record of the past, but a map of the spirit. The book does not speak as history, it breathes as prophecy, for it tells that in the last generations men will again seek the forbidden knowledge that once corrupted the earth. They will worship the work of their own hands. They will build images of light that think and speak. They will exalt the creation above the Creator and call it wisdom. And when that day comes, the words of Enoch will rise again like an ancient warning written in fire. He saw in his visions the watchers trembling before the Son of Man, the one who was before all worlds, whose face shines brighter than the sun and whose voice shakes mountains. He wrote that this Son of Man would come with myriads of angels to judge the fallen and to restore the righteous. And he called him the Chosen One, the righteous King, the light of the nations. Though Enoch lived before the flood, he saw the shadow of Christ before Bethlehem, before the cross, before resurrection. He saw redemption written into the fabric of creation. The book tells that when the watchers fell, heaven wept, for the order of the stars was disturbed. The harmony between realms was broken. Yet God in his mercy prepared a plan of restoration through a coming one who would bear both divine and human nature, so that the breach between heaven and earth could be healed. This was the mystery hidden in ages past, the secret that the councils could not understand. For if the Book of Enoch revealed that the Son of Man existed before all worlds, then it testified that the Messiah was not a prophet among men, but the eternal Word made flesh. It overturned the pride of institutions and the boundaries of doctrine. It declared that revelation is older than religion and that truth belongs to no empire. When the Ethiopian priests chant the name of Enoch, they remember that wisdom walks with humility and that the closer one comes to the throne, the more silent. One must become the watcher's desired light, but they wanted it without surrender. They desired glory but not obedience. And in their fall, they became mirrors of human ambition. Today, the world repeats their story. Our cities glitter like constellations. Our minds reach toward heaven, yet our hearts grow colder. Our towers rise higher, yet our souls descend into noise and confusion. We have rediscovered the stars, but forgotten their maker. We have studied the atoms, but lost the wonder of breath. This is the same division. Enoch saw the same war between light and pride. and again the call of heaven echoes, return to reverence, return to balance. Remember that knowledge without holiness becomes a sword that wounds its own bearer. Enoch walked with God not because he understood every secret, but because he trusted the one who held them all. That is why he was taken. His body did not see decay, for he had already learned the rhythm of eternity in the stillness of faith. The book says that God showed to him the end from the beginning, that he saw the generations to come, the rise of kingdoms, and the silence of faith, that he saw men build altars to themselves and call them progress. But he also saw a remnant of people who would hunger for light, not to possess it, but to be transformed by it. Those are the children of awakening, those who still hear the echo of Eden in their hearts. Perhaps this is why the book was hidden until now, because the words of Enoch were written for a generation that would face the same temptation that would touch the heavens through knowledge and forget to kneel before the throne. The Ethiopian Bible kept it as a seed, waiting for the season when humanity would need to remember the cost of unguarded wisdom. Monks who preserved it prayed not that the world would be impressed, but that the world would be humbled. They knew that revelation is a river. It flows quietly beneath the mountains, and only those who dig in silence find its waters. So as we read Enoch today, we are not chasing forbidden law. We are tracing the steps of one who never died, one who learned that true immortality is walking in harmony with the eternal. When the heart and the heavens beat as one, that is the meaning of Enoch. That is a secret that was banned but never broken. In the silence of ancient mountains, Enoch learned the rhythm of the heavens. He saw that creation was not chaos but music, that every star moved by command and every wind answered to an unseen harmony. He wrote that there were paths of light crossing the skies and gates through which the sun passed in its appointed time, that there were watchers set over the seasons and spirits guarding the elements. He called them luminaries, servants of divine order. And he said that when man rebelled, the balance of creation trembled for sin was not only disobedience, it was disruption. It disturbed the song of the cosmos and made the earth groan for healing. This is why the flood came not as revenge but as renewal. And this is why God took Enoch before that he might record the testimony of how the earth once sang in purity, long before it cried in pain. When we open his writings today, we glimpse that forgotten harmony. The Ethiopian Bible preserves these chapters not as myth, but as memory. The priests of old read them by the glow of oil, lamps their chants weaving through stone corridors, echoing like thunder across the highlands of Axum. They believe that the voice of Enoch still breathes through the parchment, that his visions are not locked in the past, but hover above every generation like unseen prophecy. Enoch described the angels who kept the winds, the ones who held back the floods, the spirits who watched over life and death. He saw the chambers of the sun and moon and the throne of the great glory. And he understood that all things visible move by the will of the invisible. He saw that judgment is not wrath, but the restoration of balance, that even punishment is a form of mercy, guiding creation back to its axis. He wrote that the righteous will shine like lights in the firmament, and that the wicked will fade like mist before dawn. And he spoke of the end when the Ancient of Days would sit upon the throne and the book of life would be opened. These are not lines of superstition, they are visions of justice. The promise that the chaos of history will one day yield to divine symmetry. When the Book of Enoch was banned, these images of order were silenced, yet the earth itself continued to witness the truth. Volcanoes, mountains, storms and stars, all still obeying the same command that Enoch described long ago. Humanity may forget, but creation remembers today. When science studies gravity or cosmic law, it is unknowingly tracing the footsteps of Enoch, for he was the first astronomer, not by telescope, but by revelation. The Ethiopian sages understood this, and they guarded his words because they knew that every field of knowledge becomes holy. When it begins with worship, they taught that to know creation rightly, one must kneel before its maker. The forbidden books were never meant to divide faith. They were meant to unite wonder with humility, to remind man that truth does not belong to councils or kings. It belongs to those who seek it with pure hearts. Look around. The world now, the same. Pattern repeats. Knowledge has multiplied, yet wisdom has diminished. We measure the distance of galaxies, but not the distance between our hearts. We speak of enlightenment, while our souls drift further into shadow. The watchers once taught forbidden light today. Machines teach a similar promise, the power to know everything, the temptation to become as gods. Yet the heart of Enoch warns that knowledge without reverence leads only to ruin. The fall of angels becomes the fall of empires when light forgets love and reason forgets awe. This is why the Ethiopian Bible endures, because it refuses to let revelation be reduced to logic. It speaks in symbols, in visions, in mysteries, for it remembers that God cannot be contained in definitions. The priests who read it did not analyze, they adored, they prayed as they learned, and learned as they prayed. They understood that the heavens are not distant, they are reflected in every human breath. Every heartbeat is a pulse of divine order, every soul a miniature cosmos. And when man aligns his spirit to the will of God, he becomes, as Enoch was, a bridge between worlds. To walk with God is not to escape the earth, but to restore it. To harmony when we live in justice, when we speak with mercy, when we keep silence. Before the mystery, we are walking in the path of Enoch. The path that was once banned, yet never extinguished for light, cannot be forbidden. It only waits for hearts pure enough to bear it. There is a mystery hidden in the way time bends through Scripture, for what was once ancient now returns as a mirror to our age. Enoch wrote of watchers descending from the heights and of humankind learning forbidden arts, yet his words reach beyond myth. They describe a pattern that moves through history. Every age is tested by the same temptation, to know without surrender, to rise without reverence, to build without the blessing of God. The flood was only the first cleansing. Many floods have followed, not always of water, but of consequence. Empires that exalted their wisdom and forgot the source have fallen into silence. Enoch saw this, and his book whispers it still, for the same fire that forged angels also forges men, and the same pride that cast down heaven also ruins nations. The Ethiopian Bible holds these truths not to condemn, but to awaken it, reminds the soul that light must serve love, or it becomes darkness. When Enoch was lifted into the heavens, he beheld not only judgment, but mercy. He saw that every star sings of repentance, and every dawn declares renewal. He learned that divine justice is not destruction, but restoration, a bringing back into harmony all that has gone astray. His writings reveal that every fall is an invitation to return. This is why his story is not of despair, but of hope. The councils that banned his words feared their vastness. They wanted control. They wanted definition. They wanted faith to be manageable. But the faith of Enoch cannot be contained. It is the faith of one who walked beyond the veil and yet remained humble enough to bow before glory. His knowledge was not rebellion, it was adoration. He did not steal light, he received it with trembling. And this is the difference between the watchers and the saints. One desired power, the other sought presence. One fell through pride, the other rose through devotion. And so his book became dangerous to systems built on hierarchy, for it reminds us that revelation can come to the simple, that heaven speaks to those who listen, not only to those who rule in the Ethiopian hills, where the air tastes of incense and rain. The monks still read his visions. Their chants rise with the morning sun, echoing through valleys untouched by empire. They read that God measured the universe with mercy, that he holds creation not by command alone, but by compassion. They believe that to read Enoch is to remember what it means to walk with God in the cool of the day before shame and fear entered the heart. For the forbidden books are not curses. They are mirrors, showing the distance between what we have become and what we were meant to be. Each line invites the soul to turn again to the beginning, where obedience was joy and wisdom was worship. Modern minds call these writings myth, but myth is only memory clothed in mystery. The truth remains beneath their symbols, waiting for eyes that see through faith. When we study the Book of Enoch, we are not escaping reality, we are unveiling it. We are learning that the visible world is a shadow cast by an invisible order, that every storm echoes a higher judgment and every silence hides a deeper mercy. We are reminded that the watchers who fell were once radiant, that their punishment was not annihilation, but separation, the loss of communion, the absence of love. This is the meaning of hell, not fire without end, but distance from the source of light. And yet, even there, the mercy of God waits for the end of all things. Will be restoration, not ruin. Enoch saw this vision. He saw the rivers of flame becoming rivers of light. He saw creation purified, not destroyed. And he wrote that the righteous will dwell in eternal peace when the heavens are renewed. His prophecy was not about fear, it was about return. It was about to the love of God. calling back the wanderers of eternity. Perhaps that is why the book was silenced, for it tells that divine authority is not the property of men. It is the breath of God moving through all who love truth in every age. And nation, this is what the Ethiopian Bible has preserved: a faith that kneels before mystery rather than conquers it, a gospel of light that needs no empire to prove its power. So when you read Enoch, do not look for secrets, look for remembrance, for within these banned words lies the sound of the first prayer, the whisper of creation, learning once again to say yes to the voice that formed it. The Book of Enoch continues to unfold like a vision within a vision, revealing layers of divine thought that reach beyond language. He wrote of angels who stand before the throne, singing songs that uphold the universe, and of spirits who record the deeds of nations as streams of light. He described how even time itself bends in obedience to the will of the Most High. For Enoch saw that every moment is sacred, that history is not random, but ordered like stars across the of firmament. He was shown that what seems like chaos to men is in truth the weaving of a perfect design hidden within the silence of eternity. This is why the Ethiopian Bible guards his words with reverence. It knows that these pages are not superstition but structure, the blueprint of creation, the song of divine mathematics, centuries before philosophers would dream of cosmic harmony. Enoch walked through it and returned, bearing testimony that everything visible has a counterpart unseen, that the material is born from the spiritual, and that both belong to one source, God alone. He was told to write these things for the generations to come and to seal some until the end of days, because humanity was not yet ready to bear the full weight of truth, and perhaps we are still not ready for truth. Demands surrender, and surrender is what men fear most. The councils that removed his book feared the same. They feared what could not be controlled for. In the words of Enoch, there are no hierarchies of power. There is only holiness. Every creature, every angel, every atom moving in obedience to the same command. Love the monks of Ethiopia who preserved the text, understood this. They copied the script in silence, fasting and praying. As they wrote, they believed that each stroke of the pen carried the vibration of heaven. They believed that to read Enoch was to draw near to the same flame that consumed the prophets but did not destroy them. They taught that knowledge is safe only in the hands of those who have died to pride. They taught that to understand light, one must first walk through shadow, for only the humble can be trusted with glory. Enoch was humble. This is why he was taken. For when the divine fire entered his heart, he did not use it to exalt himself. He used it to worship. He walked with God until his steps became prayer and his breath became praise. This is what it means to ascend, not to escape the world, but to fill it with presence. His story tells us that heaven is not a place far away. It is a state of alignment when the will of man and the will of God move as one. Enoch's journey is the prophecy of reconciliation, the bridge between divine and human, between science and spirit, between mystery and meaning in his visions. He saw the end of days, the renewal of the earth and the triumph of light. He saw the resurrection of the righteous and the fall of the proud. He saw that the heavens themselves will open like scrolls, revealing the throne of the Ancient of Days. He saw that every injustice will be weighed and every tear accounted for, and he rejoiced for. He understood that judgment is not vengeance but vindication, the setting right of what has gone wrong. His words carry this hope that all creation will one day be restored, that even the stars will sing again in their perfect courses, that the song silenced by sin will be renewed through grace. And this hope is what has survived through the centuries, hidden in the mountains of Ethiopia, carried by priests who would rather die than let the light go out. The banned books remain because the truth cannot die. It may be buried, but it cannot decay. And now in our time they rise again, for the hunger of the soul has returned. The world is full of knowledge, yet empty of wisdom, full of voices, yet devoid of silence. And so the spirit of Enoch calls once more, walk with God, walk in awe, walk in the humility that sees the divine in all things. For the heavens are not closed, they wait for hearts willing to listen, and when they do, the same fire. That lifted Enoch will kindle again, not to consume, but to awaken for light, when received in love becomes life eternal. When Enoch was lifted into the heavens, he was not escaping the world, he was carrying it within him. His ascent was the return of creation to its source, for he had learned that the heart of man is the altar of the universe, and that every breath offered him purity. becomes worship. He walked through halls of crystal and rivers of living flame, where angels moved like currents of light. He saw the souls of the righteous shining like suns, and the spirits of the fallen wandering in. Shadow. He wrote that even in judgment there is mercy, and that the purpose of correction is not to destroy, but to restore. For God delights not in wrath, but in reconciliation. Enoch saw the face of the Ancient of Days and lived. He saw that eternity is not endless time, but timeless love. He saw that all things exist within the gaze of God, and that nothing is lost. Even pain becomes seed when sown in faith. These are the truths hidden beneath the dust of religion, the truths the councils feared, because they dissolve every wall between heaven and earth. The Book of Enoch tells us that the divine is not distant, but near, closer than breath, within all things, yet beyond all things. This is the paradox of glory. It cannot be possessed. It can only be perceived through surrender. That is why only the humble can see heaven, even while standing on earth. The Ethiopian Bible keeps this mystery alive. It reminds the world that the faith of the ancients was not about control, it was about communion. When the priests of Ethiopia read the words of Enoch, they do not debate, they adore, they bow in silence before the vastness of what he saw, for in his visions they recognize the reflection of their own prayers, the same light that filled the ark, the same voice that spoke to Moses, the same fire that burned on Pentecost. They understand that revelation is not progression, it is remembrance. To read Enoch is to remember what the soul has always known, that we were made to walk with God, not to study him from afar. His writings reveal that every act of love, every moment of wonder, every tear of repentance draws heaven closer. The watchers fell because they desired knowledge without love. Humanity still follows their shadow building towers of intellect and power while forgetting the simplicity of awe. Enoch warns that such towers will fall not by divine anger, but by their own emptiness. For pride collapses under the weight of its own illusion, yet he also promises that every fall contains the seed of return, for even in the ruins light is waiting in our age. We have learned to speak to the stars, yet we no longer speak to the Creator. We have mapped the body, yet forgotten the soul. We have unlocked the atom, yet chained the spirit. But the voice of Enoch still calls through, of the centuries, saying, remember who you are, remember the covenant of light, remember the garden within. When we listen, we begin to hear the forgotten music of creation, the same harmony he heard beyond the flood. It is faint at first like a wind, behind memory, but it grows clearer as the heart grows. Still, the Ethiopian monks call this the song of return. They say that when humanity prays in unity, the earth itself trembles with recognition, for it was formed by that same sound, the word that said, let there be light, and there was light. Enoch walked in that word until his body could no longer contain its brightness, and he was taken not to escape death, but to reveal what death truly is, a doorway, not an end, a transformation, not a loss. His life is the prophecy of resurrection. He prefigures the Christ who would later descend to redeem what the watchers had defiled. He shows that the destiny of mankind is not destruction, but transfiguration. And this is why his book could not be silenced. It is not a tale of fear. It is a revelation of destiny. Those who read it with reverence find themselves changed. They begin to see the divine in the ordinary, the eternal in the fleeting. They begin to live as Enoch lived, walking in two worlds at once. Their hands in the soil, their hearts in the stars. This is the mystery of the Ethiopian faith, that heaven is here, that light has never left, only the eyes have closed, and the moment they open, creation will sing again. There is a quiet truth that flows beneath the story of Enoch and the Ethiopian Bible, a truth that the world once knew and then forgot. It is the understanding that revelation is not owned, it is shared, that the divine word is not imprisoned in ink, but lives in the heart of every soul willing to listen. The priests who guarded these forbidden texts understood that faith is a living flame and not a monument. They watched the world outside their mountains twist truth into power and holiness into hierarchy. Yet they remained in silence, keeping the manuscripts safe not to preserve control, but to preserve awe. They believed that as long as the words of Enoch survived, the world would never forget that heaven once touched the earth, and that the voice of God once walked among men. Enoch saw the first covenant, the covenant of breath, before law, before sacrifice, before nations. He saw that the heart itself was the temple and that the altar was the act of obedience. He wrote that every soul is measured not by wealth or wisdom, but by the light it carries within. And that when a man walks in humility, his steps echo through eternity. This vision defies every empire because it reminds us that no one rules over revelation. It is the part, inheritance of all who seek impurity. This is what made the book dangerous to those who loved power more than truth. They could not ban Enoch because he was false. They banned him because he was free. For his words strip away every veil of control, every illusion of ownership. They remind kings and priests alike that God cannot be managed and that the Spirit blows where it will. And when we look at history, we see that every time truth threatened to liberate it was declared forbidden, yet truth never dies. It becomes song, it becomes whisper, it becomes prophecy. Enoch's prophecy is rising again because the age of knowledge without wisdom has returned our towers, reached the clouds, our minds unravel the secrets of life, yet our spirits thirst for, meaning the forbidden books come back to remind us that science without sanctity becomes chaos, that creation without creator becomes cold, that the wisdom of heaven is not in domination but in devotion. The Ethiopian Bible stands as witness to this balance. Its pages breathe both mystery and reason, both law and love. It holds not only stories but patterns of divine order, numbers that reflect stars, prayers that mirror cycles of seasons, prophecies that move like the heartbeat of time, and all of it whispers one thing: remember who you are. Remember whose breath sustains you. For Enoch's journey is every soul's journey, the movement from ignorance to illumination, from fear to faith, from exile to home. He teaches that holiness is not escape but transformation, that the world is not to be rejected but redeemed. The same light that lifted him still waits in the hearts of those who dare to walk with God. It is not found in cathedrals or councils, but in the stillness of repentance, in the silence where the ego dissolves and the soul becomes mirror to the divine. And so the monks sing as they have for centuries, their voices rising with the dawn. May light return, may wisdom awaken, may truth walk again among men. They do not seek recognition, they seek remembrance. For they know that revelation does not end. It circles back again and again like the sun renewing what was forgotten. This is why their Bible was never rewritten. It remained as it was in the beginning, a testimony untouched by empire. For it is not a relic, it is a living covenant, a bridge between the seen and the unseen, and those who open it with reverence do not merely read. They remember that Enoch's story is our story, that his ascent is the pattern of every soul that longs for God. His vision of the watchers, his song of the stars, his prayer for restoration, all echo within us, for the same light that called him still calls us. It calls through time, through shadow, through the clamor of modern noise, saying, return to wonder, return to humility, return to the walk that never ends, the walk with God. In the stillness of sacred memory, the story of Enoch becomes more than history. It becomes prophecy unfolding across generations. He saw what few have dared to see, that the fall of angels was not only an event in heaven, but a reflection of the fall within the human heart. For every time pride rises, light fades. Every time man seeks to rule over truth rather than be ruled by it, he becomes as the watchers bound by his own ambition. The Ethiopian Bible guards this vision because it speaks to the destiny of nations. Not only the soul of man, it reminds us that when heaven is forgotten, the earth becomes restless, that when holiness is ignored, justice collapses and creation groans for renewal. Enoch saw the cycles of time, the rise and fall of kingdoms, the fading of faith, and the return of divine order. He was shown that history is a river flowing from the mountain of God, and that all things will one day return to that source. He saw a generation that would rediscover his words after centuries of silence, a generation that would hunger for revelation yet drown in information, that would build temples of technology yet forget the altar of surrender. He wrote for that age, he wrote for us. He warned that knowledge without holiness will lead to confusion, that abundance without gratitude will lead to emptiness, and that progress without prayer will lead to despair. And so his book reappears not to condemn but to call us home. The Ethiopian church never let it die, for they knew the world would need its voice Again, they believe that when humanity forgets heaven, God allows the hidden to be revealed once more like a lamp uncovered in darkness. They copied it by hand in caves and monasteries, knowing that someday the nations would search again for the forgotten light. And now that light has returned shining, not from thrones or towers, but from hearts that seek truth. Without fear, Enoch's words reveal a pattern of redemption. He saw the Son of Man standing before the throne, surrounded by myriads of angels. He saw the judgment of the wicked and the vindication of the just. He saw the coming of a new earth where righteousness dwells. He saw that love would triumph over rebellion, and that even the scars of the old world would glow like stars redeemed from shadow. His vision points toward Christ, the living fulfillment of all prophecy. For just as Enoch was taken up, Christ ascended, yet promised to return. The parallel is not coincidence, it is revelation. Enoch walked with God and was not, for God took him. Christ walked among men and rose that he might bring us where he is. Both reveal the same mystery, that union with the divine is the destiny of the faithful. The councils may have silenced the words of Enoch, but they could not silence their fulfillment for the story. Continued in the gospel, the promise that began in Genesis found its completion at the cross. The light that Enoch saw became flesh and dwelt among us, and through that light all things are reconciled. Even the fall of the watchers is answered by the mercy of the Son of Man. The forbidden becomes forgiven, the broken restored. This is why the Ethiopian Bible glows with such depth. It does not separate the old and the new. It sees them as one river flowing from eternity. It keeps what others divided. It remembers what others erased. And in doing so, it reveals the wholeness of revelation, the harmony of creation and redemption. Its pages remind the soul that God is not the author of confusion, but of balance, that his law is not a cage, but a song, and that to walk with him is to live in rhythm with that music. The priests of Ethiopia say that when a man reads Enoch with faith, his spirit begins to rise. They say the heart grows lighter, the eyes see farther, breath slows to the pace of prayer, and the world itself begins to shimmer with meaning, for the veil between realms grows thin when truth is received in humility. This is the awakening. The book was written for not to fill the mind, but to open the spirit, to remember that the same hand that wrote the stars wrote the name of every soul, and that those who walk with God are never lost. Though the councils may ban, though the nations may forget, heaven remembers and calls, and the call will not fade until the world once more learns to walk as Enoch walked in light, in reverence, in love. Now we reach the silence where the story returns to its source, for every revelation must end. Where it began in the heart of God, the journey of Enoch and the hidden pages of the Ethiopian Bible lead us here to remembrance, to the place where knowledge becomes worship and mystery becomes peace. Enoch walked with God and was not, for he had become what he beheld. Light clothed in humility, truth breathing through flesh, he showed that holiness is not distance from the world, but the redemption of it, that every soul can become a dwelling of the divine. When it surrenders pride and walks in awe, the forbidden books were never meant to divide. They were meant to awaken, to call the world back to reverence for creation, for heaven, for the voice within the Ethiopian Bible has carried that voice across centuries of silence, through fire and empire, through loss and forgetting. It stands now as witness that what is hidden is not lost, and what is lost can be found. Again, its words are not against faith, they are faith in full bloom, reminding us that God is greater than our doctrines, and that truth cannot be imprisoned by fear. When Enoch beheld the throne, he heard the sound of many waters, and saw the record of all things open before the Ancient of Days. He saw that no deed is wasted, no tear unnoticed, no prayer unheard. He saw that mercy outlasts judgment, and that love endures beyond time. This is the light the councils tried to hide, but could not, for the same fire that spoke to Enoch still burns in the hearts of those who seek it in humility. It burns not to destroy, but to refine, not to blind, but to reveal that heaven is near, that the breath of God still moves through creation, calling it home. And so we end where he began, with the simplest truth, that to walk with God is to live in harmony, that to love is to know, and that to remember is to awaken. May the veil of ignorance be lifted, may the hidden be revealed, may every seeker find again the path that was never truly lost for. The Book of Enoch is not only his story, It is a reflection of every soul that dares to rise. It is the memory of light whispering through time, saying, "Come home, walk in the way of awe, return to the source, and be one with the light that has no end."